Open your eyes.
No! No! Just stop.
You're only going to see what I want you to see.
Don't think, you idiot! Just get me out of here! Oh my god!
Looking for me?
Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been just about a month now, by the time you guys see this video, since the release of the Until Dawn movie, and even though I thought I got all of my thoughts and feelings out about it during my initial deep dive, it is still living in my head rent-free like a very annoying tenant, and so I have to talk about it some more. Because you guys in the comment section under that video brought up the idea of the Until Dawn universe, and that this film could maybe potentially fit the way it is now into this supermassive and Until Dawn universe. This is going to be much more of a casual and conversational laid-back video here. It's very loosely scripted. So I would love to hear all of your thoughts and feelings about this down below, because this video is very much inspired by all of your ideas on the previous video. Without your thoughts and feelings, I wouldn't have started to think about the Until Dawn universe as a whole and how this film could potentially fit in. So let's keep the conversation going here, because I love when we are able to share ideas like this. So with all of that said, let's jump into it, but before we do, please remember to hit that like button down below, click subscribe to see more videos from me, follow me over on Twitch, and leave a comment down below. When we hit 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube, the Discord channel will go live for all of you to join, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And of course, here is your one and only warning, that this video contains spoilers. Alright, grab your car keys, find your file, and let's loop into it. The Until Dawn universe in the video games prior to this movie's release is something that always had a little bit of conversation and debate around it. There's always sort of been this lingering question of, does the Until Dawn universe include its spiritual successors of the Dark Pictures anthology and the Quarry, or is it solely contained to these three games of Until Dawn, Rush of Blood, and The Inpatient? Now, this struggle to define something as a true part of a universe rather than just a sequel is not limited to just this series. I think trying to find a definition for what qualifies something as either a cinematic universe or a fictional universe has always been a bit tricky to define. Whenever a studio has put out multiple types of games with similar styles, like we see here with Until Dawn, The Quarry, and the Dark Pictures anthologies, it's very easy to just assume and lump them into one giant universe. At their most basic level, entries into a cinematic universe or a fictional universe should be standalone stories to intrigue and inquire a new audience for every single edition, while still having ties and connections to its predecessors in that universe. But how they make these connections and how they connect this universe together is where the cause for conflict really arises, because every single universe does something different. The Pixar universe, for example, relies solely on Easter eggs that fans then connect together in order to create this connection of films and the Pixar universe. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, however, is a lot more rigorous in their structure, as the timelines of events are much more in line throughout all of these films. Characters are often appearing in a multitude of these different films, and many of the locations that these stories occur in are the same across this universe. A more balanced approach to these cinematic universes would probably be the example of Quentin Tarantino's films or the Conjuring universe itself. Quentin Tarantino kind of connects all of his films by having the occasional name drop to previous characters from earlier films, as well as shared locations, while The Conjuring is of course based on the infamous paranormal files of both Ed and Lorraine Warren. But aside from just pulling from the source material, the characters of Ed and Lorraine Warren do appear across a multitude of these films as well, therefore connecting them further through these characters. So in total, all of these universes seem to connect these stories together through either shared characters, shared locations, shared timelines of events, and Easter eggs, although I'm going to kind of leave that one out because I feel like Pixar's universe is a very special case, and I have yet to come across any other fictional universe or really any other gaming series or story at all that relies solely on the connection of Easter eggs. So just put a little star next to the Easter eggs in your list here, because outside of Pixar, I don't think this can work on its own. So with all these rules outlined and the portrayal of how these different universes connect to one another here, I want to now take a look at the Until Dawn universe, and in my definition for this video, I am going to include the Dark Pictures anthologies and the Quarry within that universe, due to the fact that they have so many Easter eggs within them, as well as the gameplay style and structure being identical to that of Until Dawn. So let's actually dive in and discuss how each of these 8 games are connected and tied together to the Until Dawn universe before we go on to see if this film somehow fits. Until Dawn is of course the first game that started this all, with its amazing story that captivated the hearts of so many. If you aren't familiar with the story of the game, I don't know how you made it to this video, let alone made it almost 5 minutes in here, but if you did somehow make it here and don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend going to check out Gaming Harry's The Story Explained of Until Dawn, so that at the very least you understand the core elements that I will be discussing in relation and connection to the games in the rest of this universe. The next game to come out that is connected to the Until Dawn universe was 2016's Rush of Blood for PSVR. In this game, at the surface, it kinda just looks like a highlight reel of all the best scares and the best scary creatures from Until Dawn itself. For the longest time, I brushed this aside, assuming that was all this game had to offer, but man was I wrong. There is an actual direct connection to Until Dawn here, because of the secret ending when you beat the game on insanity mode.
There's something down here.
We have a visual on a survivor. One survivor, repeat. Is that?
Oh, fuck.
The developers of the game actually went on to say that this game is a descent into madness that one of the characters from Until Dawn is going through, and by the end of this game, we see very clearly that it is Josh, when he sadly gets transformed into a Wendigo here.
There's something down here.
We have a visual on a survivor. One survivor, repeat. Is that? Stay back! Stay back! No! Stay back!
I'm surprised this canon ending isn't really talked about even more, especially now that with the Until Dawn remake, which I don't really plan to talk on too much more in relation to the universe, because not much changes aside from just this one change with Sam's new ending here. But now that we see Sam surviving the events of the Until Dawn game, when you combine that to this vision that Josh has as he transforms into a Wendigo, we know for certain that Sam survives, since she is the one that tells the police officers where to find Josh and to go look in the mines. But we also can assume that Emily, Ashley, and Matt are seemingly dead in this canon ending as well, based on the bodies that we see hanging in the background of this scene here. I'm getting a bit sidetracked for just a moment here, but this would then imply that Sam, Mike, and Chris all survived the events of the Until Dawn game. So this on-rail shooter that I brushed aside for years actually holds a lot of information within it. The next game within the Until Dawn universe to come out was 2018's The Inpatient, that's also for the PSVR. This game connects directly to the Until Dawn universe because it acts as a prequel to the events that we see in 2014's Until Dawn. This game also has a secret ending, depending on your decisions that you make, where you end up seeing through the eyes of the Machu Picchu that attacks both Hannah and Beth at the start of the Until Dawn story.
Hannah? Beth?
Now, of course, this game did receive a little bit of criticism because it was a bit confusing, and they did change around some minor background characters of events, and the timeline and situation that we see Mike read in the notes in the hospital and sanatorium doesn't necessarily line up with the events we're seeing in this game, but at their core, the lore of the Wendigos still remains the same, because in order to transform into a Wendigo, even though I know this game is a bit confusing with the whole to eat a bug or not eat a bug scenario, you still need to consume human flesh in order to be transformed with the Wendigo. But yes, they did change the requirements for the timelines and how long it takes someone to transform into a Wendigo. That is something that was altered in this game, but aside from that, the core of the Wendigos and how you transform is still reliant on the fact of eating human flesh. So with this being in the same location of the main game, and with the lore of the Wendigos remaining mostly the same, this still has a strong spot within the Until Dawn universe. With those two games being directly connected to Until Dawn, we now enter into the more spiritual successors that rely and are connected through their Easter eggs and the structure of gameplay, which is the Dark Pictures Anthology and the Quarry. The Dark Pictures Anthology is an anthology series that follows the same gameplay structure in relation to Until Dawn by having decision-based gameplay and the butterfly effect strong at play. All four of these games don't have direct ties in because they don't share any of the characters from the previous games like we see occur in the Inpatient. But aside from the structure being the same, the game really does rely on the Easter eggs in order to connect it back to the Until Dawn original gameplay here, because we see a lot of the same character deaths get reused for these characters in this story. And the Quarry, the final addition to the Until Dawn universe here, because I'm not really counting Switchback VR. I know it came out and I haven't really had a chance to research it, so I'm not going to be counting it to the Until Dawn universe here because I haven't seen any information about how it ties in. But if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comment section about that one. But the Quarry acts very similar to the Dark Pictures Anthology's connection by only having Easter eggs to the death scenes, Easter eggs and little subtle hints in the corners of screens and figurines in the backgrounds and such. But it also, aside from the structure being similar, also has a lot more theories around Sam's involvement, in particular with the podcast at the end of the game. A lot of people theorize that Sam is the one that sent this information into the podcasters here, further implying that she is someone who is out there hunting and investigating all of these paranormal cases and instances where people end up going through a similar experience she did. But aside from that, these sets of games are very loosely tied into the universe, but you'll see at the end of this video, I wanted to specifically include them in the universe because of the potential they have in order to help expand the film into this world. I guess on that note there, let's try and discuss why I feel this film doesn't currently fit in the Until Dawn universe, but could very easily fit into an expanded Until Dawn universe if they decide to create more sequels and films. The first area that this film fails to connect to the Until Dawn universe is in its structure. The video games are at a bit of an advantage here because of the fact that they can use the exact same structure from Until Dawn as seen in the Dark Pictures Anthology and the Quarry, and be able to give off the same feeling of the similar universe, therefore allowing them to be looped into the overarching Until Dawn universe. But the fact that this film didn't use the butterfly effect to its fullest extent makes me feel like it's not looped into the universe because of its structure. They kind of try to do it. They imply that, you have to learn the right way to get out. Your actions do have an impact on whether you live or die, but the night changes. It doesn't remain the same. Also, the fact that they had this tool of the video camera that they could then learn the pattern and learn whether to go right or left is so baffling to me that they didn't use it to its fullest extent. If, for example, our characters had to go through the night, if the night didn't change, if they had to learn what decisions to make, similar to how us as players have to learn the patterns in order to escape with all of the characters still alive, then that structure would be identical to that of the games, and I could easily see this fitting within the Until Dawn universe. It would feel a lot more naturally like an extension and expansion of this world and these stories, rather than this sort of time loop situation that doesn't really make much sense. It's definitely an attempt at a butterfly effect, but in my opinion, they really missed the mark here, so therefore, structure-wise, we are automatically crossing this out as a potential for a connection. The next way that other cinematic universes and fictional universes have connected their stories together is through the characters crossing over, which we obviously see another attempt here with Dr. Hill. I saw a lot of people saying that him being in this film automatically connects it to the Until Dawn universe, and that just because he's different in here doesn't exclude the fact that there could be a parallel universe situation at play. And while I wouldn't necessarily mind a parallel universe, although I do feel that that trope is sort of being overplayed a little bit nowadays, that could definitely still work. I would still need some sort of reasoning behind Dr. Hill. Who is he? What is he in particular? How does he have these abilities? I guess I would just need more answers, because as of right now, Dr. Hill in the game and Dr. Hill in the film are two entirely different characters. And this really aggravates me because in the examples I gave prior to this in the cinematic universes that we discussed, the characters, when they cross over into another story where they are perhaps no longer a main character, their personality and their character doesn't change. Tony Stark is still Tony Stark when he enters into the Spider-Man films. He still is the same person and still has the same characteristics, but here, even though the name is the same and the initial personality is, yes, slightly creepy, similar to that in the game version, at their core, they're two entirely different characters with different personality traits and different origin stories. In the game, Dr. Hill is tied solely to Josh's mental health due to the fact that Josh is hallucinating a version of his psychotherapist here in order to try and cope with the horrific events of the evening. But in the film, Dr. Hill is an entirely separate entity. He's his own being, and he's a magical one at that, apparently, since he's able to withstand the curse of the Wendigo that is occurring at this mountain. Not to mention, the film version also has Dr. Hill sort of studying the Wendigo. It almost seems like they took some characteristics from the Inpatient by having Dr. Hill study and do these tests on the Wendigo, similar to Dr. Bragg's in the Inpatient. I don't know if this was an intended Easter egg here or not, but either way, Easter eggs are not enough to connect this to the Until Dawn universe due to the lack of a second connection. I'll go on to discuss theories on how they could connect Dr. Hill moving forward, but as the film is right now, I just don't see Dr. Hill being in it as a strong enough connection to the Until Dawn universe because of all of these drastic differences in his character. Since we're talking about characters that are seen in both the game and the film, another character that appears in both is obviously the characters of the Wendigo. However, once again, similar to how Dr. Hill is drastically different, the Wendigo themselves are completely different because of how you transform into a Wendigo. In the game, there is obviously the strict rule that even the Inpatient held onto, which is the fact that you have to eat human flesh in order for the Wendigo spirit to consume you and transform you into a Wendigo. However, the film decided to do something entirely different here by saying that the Wendigo spirit will transform you due to fear and anxiety. Me personally, I still hate this change so much because they go from something that is so terrible, so inhumane, eating human flesh in order to transform into a Wendigo, and they downgrade it to a natural human reaction of feeling fear and anxiety after multiple nights of horror. They are literally going through hell on repeat. Of course anyone would get scared. I really don't like this change, but putting my own dislike for this change aside here, the differences in the Wendigo leave me left to say that there is no connection to the Until Dawn universe through the Wendigo. So we don't have a connection through the structure of the story, we don't have a connection through these characters, we also don't have a connection through the setting, and in my opinion, outside of the Pixar universe, just connecting things through Easter eggs is simply not enough to tie together a fictional universe like this. So with all of this said, the current film I do not feel fits within the Until Dawn universe at all, but if they decide to make a sequel, I do feel that this movie could be connected into the Until Dawn universe in a multitude of different ways. The first of which you guys mentioned in the comments section, which is this idea of there being a parallel universe, and that this is one version of what Until Dawn could have been. I, again, feel like they would have to explain quite a few things in relation to Dr. Hill's character and how he sort of is connected through both of these versions of the story. And I'm not the biggest fan of them doing this, but I am really a big fan of them focusing in on Dr. Hill as this mysterious being. Similar to how the curator is this looming presence and he appears in the backgrounds of the stories that we see in the Dark Pictures anthology, I kind of think using this idea of Dr. Hill being a more evil version of the curator is something they could really lean into. Dr. Hill could maybe have been in the curator's position, but then decided to take matters into his own hands for evil intentions, and perhaps him in Until Dawn the game was manipulating and controlling Josh, encouraging him to do these evil intentions, therefore causing the events in Until Dawn. Obviously not the events concerning the Wendigo, but gathering his friends and therefore going forward and almost causing their deaths by gathering them there on the mountaintop that evening. Since I had the thought, I can't stop thinking about how the curator and Dr. Hill could maybe somehow be connected. I think it's a really fascinating idea. I mean, people have always kind of pointed out the similarities in not only how they portray themselves and their personalities, but also, of course, the outfits and how they are dressed. So I can't help but think that while the curator is there trying to help save lives in the Dark Pictures anthology, maybe Dr. Hill is trying to take them, and they have the same sort of control and power and influence over these stories within the Until Dawn universe. It's just a thought, it's just a theory, but I can't stop thinking about it, and this is why I kind of feel that if they do put out a sequel for this film, the best way to tie it into the Until Dawn universe would be through the characterization of Dr. Hill. Also, since they severely messed up the lore of the Wendigos, that's another reason I kind of feel this is the only way. But with Dr. Hill, they really have so many opportunities to tie this back to the Until Dawn lore and universe here. Like, how cool would it be if they retold the story from the Until Dawn game, but from the twisted point of view of this now evil and corrupted version of Dr. Hill? I find that to be so cool. So there really is a lot of cool things they could do to tie this back to the Until Dawn universe, so I would love to hear all of your thoughts and theories about it down below. Now, another area that you guys had mentioned in the comment section previously was that perhaps Sam and Mike could come into these cinematic worlds and save the brand new characters from their demise from these creatures. Perhaps they become almost hunters in this situation, paranormal investigators, and this thought about Sam in particular becoming an investigator isn't exactly new. This was brought up during the release of the Quarry, and with the brand new ending that we get in the remake, it further implies that she is studying all of these mystical creatures. So there's definitely an option for them to tie in the survivors of the events of Until Dawn into the films, but again, me personally, I feel like they should just retell the game story so that we at least have a canon ending for the film audience goers that are seeing this world and experiencing this story for the first time through the films. Because we have to remember that while most of us watching this video have played all of the games, the people watching the film haven't, so we would need to introduce these characters before they suddenly jump in and save the day at the very end. But again, it's a bit too early to start theorizing what they might do if they do put out a sequel, because the film's only been out for 1 month. So all of these theories, while I love talking about them, it's just a bit too early to see what they might end up doing here. But bottom line, at the end of the day, this film, the way it is right now, I personally don't see it being connected to the Until Dawn universe. But they could very easily go forward and connect it into the Until Dawn universe in some very fascinating ways. While I've loved theorizing about how this could relate to the Until Dawn universe, my thoughts and feelings on the film itself hasn't really changed. I still feel like they should have changed the title of this movie because of the fact that it's not a retelling or choosing a canon ending and pathway from the Until Dawn game story. They very easily could have and should have called this film something along the lines of Until Dawn, the beginning, or the time loop, or given it another additional title in there, or whatever the title is. An Until Dawn story is another option they could have done. I still stand by the fact that this film is a bad representation of the Until Dawn game, but that the film itself is actually a pretty enjoyable film to watch. Aside from the weird time jump in the middle, as we discussed in my deep dive there, the film is quite interesting, the characters were intriguing, but at the end of the day, it's just full of very subtle Easter eggs to tie it back to the Until Dawn game and universe, and that is not enough for it to gain and keep the title of Until Dawn, let alone be included within the Until Dawn universe. Of course, this is just my opinion at the end of the day, so let me know all of your thoughts, theories, and opinions down below, and I will meet you guys down there this time because I don't really see myself making another video discussing it. I kind of want to just try and move on from this film. But that being said, if you guys do want a more formal and detailed video discussing the Until Dawn universe in depth, Let me know, because I definitely don't think I would mind putting that together, especially since the Dark Pictures Anthology second season is going to be coming out later this year. It might be fun to do a deep dive look into the Until Dawn universe and how every single one of these games is not only connected, but also just talk about the events of each game in a greater depth. So let me know if that's something you would want. And with that, everyone, if you guys like this video, make sure you guys hit the like button down below, leave all of your thoughts in the comment section, and while you're down there, make sure you guys click subscribe to see more videos from me, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys!